Hello, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed, for those returning, I hope you've enjoyed the amazing panel this morning on how charities are addressing the cost of living crisis. And if you're brand new to Digital Fundraising Day and you're just joining us for this session, big welcome. You're in for a treat. There's lots in store today, including this session that we're about to go into. I'm Chris Hall. I'm head of marketing here at Charity Digital, and I've got the absolute pleasure of hosting our next webinar, which is practical steps to engage with corporate donors. Due to the disconnect between the corporate and charity sectors and the increasing pressures of the cost of living crisis, small to medium-sized charities, really need to diverse their income generation activities in order to survive. And that's why we've set this session up today, and that's what it's all going to be about. The wonderful James Delore Digital Amplifier at Dragon Hall will be exploring the steps that they took in order to build relationships with corporate donors, leading to an expansion of breadth, scope, and quality of services as well overall. Since 2017, James has generated over £4 million for Dragon Hall through council tenders, charitable trusts, and corporate donations. He has 20 years of experience of managing youth centres in statutory and voluntary sector settings. He's guest lecturer at the University of East London on their master's degree course in youth and community, co-authored 5 published articles on the use of technology in youth work, and is currently studying a doctorate. That being said, there is nobody better suited, I think, to be walking us through this today. But before I hand over to James, I just want to remind everyone that we will have some time for questions at the end, so please submit your questions using the Q&A box. That is the little icon next to the live chat. The icon looks like it's a question mark inside a speech bubble. If you can't find it, click on that and you can submit your questions there. So without further ado, please everybody join me in welcoming James to the stage. Welcome, James. Over to you.
Hi, thanks there. My name's James Delore, and my Twitter bio says that I'm a youth worker, student, husband, democratizer, tech enthusiast, marginal gainer, and general believer in people. It should also now include being a dog dad. As has been said, I work for a charity called Dragon Hall and have specific responsibility for a youth centre in London called Soapbox. And today I wanted to share with you how corporate and the corporate world continues to help us deliver and expand our work. So that's who I am. And I wanted to start off by saying why we think this session is important. There are significant financial pressures that our sector is facing. The combined impact, as many of you will know, of the pandemic and the cost of living crisis is profoundly affecting the voluntary sector, and especially smaller charities and social enterprises. Small charities below £100,000 are declining, and the number of newly registered charities is also falling. According to a report from Social Enterprises UK, 4,000 social enterprises may close this winter due to huge financial pressures. And 68 of respondents to this report had increases in operating costs during the last quarter, with nearly 3 in 10 reporting significant increases. As one person commented, it's horrendous at the moment. Contracts are drying up and grants are ultra competitive. In terms of government support, income from both central and local government has declined by 3% and 9% respectively from 2019 to 2020. And contracts are also declining. They made up 82% of all income from government in 2010 to 2011, but made up only 23% in 2019 to 2020. So the cost of charitable trust applications is the next thing that I wanted to look at. They continue to be a bedrock for the sector. So now let's look at the costs attached to these. 1 in 8 charities report spending 3 working days a week or more on grant applications. Small charities spend 38% of their total grant income on fundraising applications, whilst medium-sized charities spend 35%. But a Bath University study estimated the annual cost of grant applications at £1.1 billion, and 2/3 of these applications were unsuccessful. And this means that 374 million was spent on successful grants, but a staggering 726 million was spent on unsuccessful applications. So let's drill a little bit more into that. Trust applications have become even more competitive during the pandemic, and here are some examples. I've picked a number of sort of kind of highlight and sort of the sort of leading charities and charitable trusts. Just to give you some example of actually where this is at. The Tudor Trust, their success rate for applications was around 1 in 8, which means only 13% of applicants received a grant in 2020. Esme Fairbairn in 2021, around 6% of applications through the open application process went on to be awarded grants. Slightly smaller charity, the Steel Charitable Trust, since the outbreak of COVID, applications have more than doubled, making the average success rate since March 2020 at a little under 5%. The Trust for London, they have a slightly higher rate, well, a significantly higher rate of 31% of applicants receiving a grant. But the PRS Foundation, their open fund, approximately 10% of applicants were successful. So the Charity Excellence Frameworks, which is a really good resource, and I suggest that people go and have a look at that. So there's no magic fundraising ratio, but very roughly 10% of bids to cold funders are successful, whereas it's, can go up to 30% for engaged funders. And as a final thing on this kind of sector, on this section, I just wanted to say, I just ask you to think about what you think. I'm going to show you the figure in a second, but just answer this question for yourself. What do you think the support from the corporate sector has been in a similar period? So I'll just give you a second to think about that. And that's the figure. Corporates are only providing 4% of voluntary sector income at the moment. So what does this tell us? Well, it tells us that charities and social enterprises are facing a perfect financial storm at the moment. National and local government support has declined significantly. Charities are spending heavily on charitable trust applications, but this is a bun fight with anything between 5 and 30% likelihood of success. From the figure I just showed you, there's huge growth potential in engaging corporates to address these issues. And 81% of charities want corporates to provide unrestricted funding so they can use the money to meet essential needs. But the current situation is frankly woeful on both sides. Our sector has failed to engage and articulate why we need corporate support. And corporates really are failing the communities that they're part of. So what is CSR? Corporate social responsibility is all about companies playing their responsible part in society and giving back, referring to the efforts made by a company to improve society and contribute towards sustainable development. The benefits to CSR for companies is better company image and customer loyalty, identifying areas for improvement, increased employee engagement and satisfaction, and attracting talent and investors. And the benefits for our sector are more volunteers, more funding and exposure, and stable partnerships. But now I'm just going to turn to some of the key areas of CSR and just give you a little bit of an overview as to what they refer to. So the first is environmental responsibility, and this is the commitment to sustainable, environmental friendly operations and prioritizing sustainable practices. And this can include work to address carbon footprint, greenhouse gas emissions, sustainable resources, or recycling single-use plastics. The next one is ethical responsibility, and this is about upholding human rights principles, championing ethical responsibility, or addressing human rights injustices such as racial, gender, or disability discrimination. Philanthropic responsibility refers to, in particular, donating money towards worthwhile causes, in putting money towards education programs and or funding local charities. Oh no, sorry, that's sorry. Sorry. Economic responsibility is about corporate citizenship, including investing in alternative energy, putting more money into education programs, and funding local charities. Diversity and inclusion relates to promoting work that advances diversity and embraces different cultures, backgrounds, and identities, both within an organization, but also, I think, crucially within the wider community. And then the final area is employee engagement. And this is about keeping corporate teams engaged with a company and with the local community. And it's moved away from, and I'll talk a little bit more about team bonding exercises. For those of you that have engaged in CSR historically, maybe you've found that corporates have found ways of using your services or your charity to really benefit just them in terms of team bonding exercises. And this has moved away from that and towards dedicated volunteering time each year, or pots of money which employees from within an organization are given access to so that they can support the causes that are important to them. So I'm now going to just turn to the examples of some of the support that we've had. And I've chosen 3 examples of support that we've had from corporate partners. And very roughly, that support falls into 3 categories: skills-based volunteering, access to resources, and then financial support. And the first thing that I'm going to talk about is our community fridge, which we're just in the process of setting up right now. And this covers areas including environmental responsibility, ethical responsibility, and employee engagement. And the community fridge is a social action program based on the environment. And it's really focused on distributing food and unused food and addressing issues around food waste. So the skills-based volunteering aspect of that was 6 volunteers from Expedia, Macquarie, and a law firm called Slaughter and May helped with the strategic and operational setup of this fridge for us. And very conservatively, just using the median wage as a mechanism to calculate this, their 300 hours of volunteering has a value of about £4,911. The second area is access to resources. We've had 2 commercial fridges donated to us by corporate partners to a value of about £7,000. And we also have partnerships with Co-op and Gorillas, which is a London-based food app that's providing weekly food. It's difficult to calculate exactly what the value of this is, but I would estimate somewhere in the region of about £5,000 per year. And then the final element is the financial support, which is coming from the Co-op, who are providing £4,000 to help us set up and run the fridge. And then one of the volunteers who came through the volunteering program, so one of the volunteers from Macquarie, has facilitated a fundraising effort and sort of internally within Macquarie. And we now have a £2,000 donation from them towards the running cost of the fridge. So the total value of the corporate support in year 1 is £22,911. And I think it's important when you're thinking about this is to look at the various different ways that we've gone about getting that support. It's not just about the financial support, it's about actually the totality of the efforts and work that has been done on our behalf. The second area is focused on the support that we had to write the 2 tenders that we've done to run Soapbox Youth Centre. And this references philanthropic responsibility and economic responsibility. The first of those is skills-based volunteering. And in 2016 and 2019, a company called Winning Tenders did exactly what they said on the tin, supporting the research, the budgeting and the writing that secured 2 competitive tenders for us to run Soapbox Youth Centre. The first one was for 3.5 years and the second for 15 years. The approximate value of this was £8,500, but it led directly onto us securing contracts worth just under £3 million. So again, it's about thinking, how can you leverage support that isn't just about money, but potentially can then lead on to money. And then the final area is about our employment support program. And this covers the areas of ethical responsibility, diversity and inclusion, and employee engagement. And again, there are a number of different facets to that. The first of which is skill-based volunteering. So we're currently delivering a 2-year mentoring program as part of a funded piece of work for the GLA. But that doesn't cover actually the support from the corporate sector. And what we're doing is we're engaging with a number of industry leaders to connect young people into the STEAM industries. For those of you that don't know what STEAM is, it's STEM plus A, so it's science, technology, engineering, arts, and maths. And young people are massively disconnected from that, both in terms of the access to skills and also the access, particularly to people that can support them in the sort of development of their journey and growth into these industries. In year 1, so we're just coming towards we're sort of about 2/3 of the way through year 1. Professional volunteers will deliver around 257 hours of mentoring, And again, at a hugely conservative, I mean, bearing in mind the fact that I'm using the median wage to calculate this, I'm not using the the cost that they would actually set to us if they were coming from within their own corporate environment. That's got a value of £4,207. And in addition to that, the work has led on directly to a donation of £10,000 to expand our general employment work, and 3 further offers of support from corporate partners that we're just negotiating right now. And alongside that, we've had financial support from Macquarie again, who've been a real, they're involved in 4 aspects of our work currently. So they've really stepped up for us over the course of the last year. And they're providing £9,000 for us to deliver paid work roles for 2 young people with severe learning disabilities. And the total value of that corporate support is £23,207. So I hope you can see how we've kind of got a range of different types of support. And this is significantly enhanced the sort of breadth and scope of what we're able to deliver. Without their support, none of this work would really be able to take place. So just want to talk about how we got this support. So in terms of the community fridge, at the top left, you'll see the logo for the Big Alliance. And the volunteers came through a program called Core Volunteers. And this was run by a local networking organization called the Big Alliance. The sort of the middle one, Gorillas, the connection with them came through part of our own network. And I'll come on to actually how you can broker and use your own network in ways that might surprise you. You may have connections that you don't even know about. But that was how that came about for us. And this person who was part of our network recommended us to Gorillas and arranged for us to meet their head of property and expansion to negotiate food and resource support. So again, think about how you can connect into the people that you already have access to. Co-op, the food support aspect of that came through local outreach work. We're now getting support from 3 local stores. And the additional money from Macquarie came as a result of the positive experience that one of the volunteers had, who went back to the firm and said, actually, we need to get behind this to an even greater extent than we are right now. In terms of the tender, you'll see at the very bottom in the middle, the logo for the business network. We've been part of the business network for over 10 years, attending their monthly lunches and using them really as a vehicle to promote our work and build relationships with the business community. And I'll come on again to the length of time that you need to put into this. But that was 10 years, that we've been involved with them. And when the tender came up in 2016, we approached the organizer, who's a wonderful lady called Helen Bennett, and asked if she knew anyone who could help. And she said, funny you should ask, I do, actually. And she reached out to the bottom right, which is winning tenders. And she pitched our case to them, and they agreed to meet. In the first meeting, we put forward our ideas and plans for the centre and growth for the charity. And they were, I think, taken aback by the sort of vision that we had for what we were trying to do. And because the business network had got behind us and advocated strongly on our behalf, and because we had a clear vision of what we wanted to do, they agreed to help. And then, having delivered a successful project the first time around, they also then agreed to support our second application in 2019. And then finally, the employment support program. Once we had the green light for the mentoring program, we started the process of beginning to identify the types of individuals and organizations that we needed to deliver the project. And another organization that we're connected to with, Loud Futures, who Jordan was going to be here today, but unfortunately he's had a hospital appointment, so he couldn't be here, unfortunately. He began to connect us in with corporates from within the STEAM sector that shared our ethos and values. And again, I think that's really key for you to take away is don't just take anything. Make sure that an organization that you're looking, or individuals that you're looking at, are really coming from the same starting point as you are in terms of the work. So yeah, so that was one of the areas that we used, and beyond that, we now have a specific employment program and project that we can pitch to any corporate who offered us support. So when we're being corporates are approaching us, or when we're in environments where we've got corporates to engage with, we now have this project that we can directly go to them and say, actually, if you want to contribute, if you want to give back, here's a mechanism through which you can do that. But we've now reached a point, actually, as we're sort of, say, about 2/3 through the first year, where businesses are starting to reach out to us. Word of mouth is starting to spread about this opportunity. And we're beginning to get corporates that are kind of approaching us about this. So just as we kind of come towards the end, I'm going to start to look at what I would take as the 7 top tips that we've garnered over the course of the last few years of doing this. And the first of these, you have to invest time in this. Significant support from impactful volunteering resources or money won't come overnight. We spent over 5 years attending the business network before the first tender application. But if you commit, the benefits are there. We invited winning tenders to the opening of the centre and stayed in touch with them during the first contract. So we had a lengthy relationship to call upon when it came to ask for their help for the second tender. And I think, I've tried to give you some information on the amount of time and effort that's put into charitable trust applications. This is a similar lengthy process, and you have to invest the time in it if you're going to get the sort of returns that are possible, I think. The second thing that we've taken away is that there's a real need to engage with business networks. And what do I mean by that? Cold calling might work for you. Just reaching out to a business and saying, this is who we are. You've got no relationship with them. You've never spoken to them before. This is who we are. Can we get your support? It might work. But in our experience, it's going out and researching the sort of local business networks that were available to us within London, but I think also more broadly. And I'll come on to, at the end, just some links where you can find access to business networks. Going out and finding where these groups are meeting, the events they're putting on, who the organizers are in your area, for us is much more likely to lead on to success. And all of the major bits of support have come through business networks rather than cold calling. And just as how we go about this, we contact the organizer to start off with, explain who we are and ask if we can join. And we really play up the benefits of CSR to the network, not just to the corporates that are involved in the network, but to the network itself. And we attend their meetings or events consistently. You don't just go once and then they don't see you again. And this creates an ongoing awareness about who we are, and builds the longer term relationships that can lead on to support. I think this is quite an important point, is think about how your work relates to what corporates need from a CSR perspective. And I kind of gave you sort of 6 areas before that sort of some of the key areas in terms of CSR and what corporates want to get out of this, because you need to think about, this isn't just about us. This is about actually, how do you pitch this? How do you find a way for this to resonate with corporates? So how does your work relate to diversity and inclusion, or employee engagement, or environmental responsibility? And then once you've done this, what we've done, and what I would say is an interesting starting point for you to think about, is to create a portfolio of specific projects that you're going to pitch to corporates. Don't just offer them everything that you do. Be very focused on, okay, so these are some of the areas that they might want to be looking at. These are some of the things that we specialize in, and how can we connect the dots there? And if you find a corporate that you think might fit, check out their mission, go and do some research. Again, it's a little bit like you would do for a fundraising application. You go and do the research, you find out, you read the guidance. The guidance is there on people's websites. These are the things that they're focused on. These are the areas that they're interested in. And then pick work that kind of connects those two things. There's an interesting question about national corporates versus local businesses, and there isn't a right answer to this. You may have big corporates in your area that have who offer the capacity for greater levels of support, but you need to remember that these are more complicated to get access to, or maybe more complicated to get access to, and the competition with bigger charities to get their help will be greater. It's a similar decision that you have to make in terms of charitable trusts. Do we go with a bigger application to a more competitive funder, or rely on smaller pots of money from small funders? As I say, there isn't a right answer to that, but it's something definitely to consider. Make a clear case for the support. Be clear about the types of support you're asking for, what the need for this work is, why it's important, and how this will benefit the corporate. And then the point that I was making earlier on, don't be afraid to use the tools that you have. You may have volunteers working for a corporate who might be able to open doors, or you may have people who access what you do who are willing to help. It's very powerful for a corporate to hear directly from the people who benefit from the work that you do. So use those things that you have access to directly. And then the final tip is don't take offers to help or offers of help or support that don't benefit you. There's a lot of work still to do in this area. We are by no means, have the definitive version of this, and we're always learning and always developing new wrinkles to what we do. But what we don't do is we don't take team bonding exercises for their staff just purely for the benefit of their staff. This has to be connected into something that's meaningful for us. And frequently, and I'm sure there may be people who are listening to this who've had offers of team painting days. What we've found is we just end up having to get a professional decorator to make good on the lousy painting job that you've had. So don't just take the first thing that's on the table if it doesn't benefit you. And the final thing is, because you might be thinking, oh my God, how do I begin to even start to think about this? And what I've just done here is given a list of things that might be interesting places for you to start. So just in no particular order, these are some things that I would encourage everybody who might be thinking about this to have a look at. BNI is the longest established networking group. They've got what they call chapters all across the UK. There's only one person from each trade who's allowed into this, into any chapter. And as with all of this stuff, it requires work, legwork and commitment and time. For networking is an alternative to BNI, and it's slightly more flexible and less formal. And they have groups across the country. Reach out to your local Chamber of Commerce because they will run their own networking events, but also will be able to advise you of potentially other things, other events that are going on in the local area. Co-working spaces, if you're in an area that's got co-working spaces and they're popping up all over the country, they offer opportunities to network, in particular with small business owners from a variety of different sectors. Things like the Business Network, these are networking membership groups. They usually focus on a specific area geographically. They sometimes charge a monthly fee that have various benefits, but you can often get either discounted or free access to them as a charity. LinkedIn is quite an interesting place to start and sort of kind of connect in with corporates. And there's also an event search feature that you might want to look at. Business Improvement Districts, known as BIDs, that's a geographical area where local businesses have come together to invest in the area, and frequently they will be able to offer access to a variety of different corporate groups. And then there's a thing called the Entrepreneurship Handbook, and that's links to a variety of business networks and networking groups across the UK. So thank you all for listening. I hope that was useful.
Thanks very much, James. It was. I don't mind saying that on behalf of everybody else. Incredibly thorough, great session. Really enjoyed it. Thanks very much. We've got time to squeeze in a few questions before we'll have to move on for the next session. The first one from an anonymous user. This goes back to when you were talking about your examples of support. They say that they really struggle to communicate to corporates that it costs them money, time, materials to deliver employee volunteering days. Materials they will usually pay for, but our staff time is often deemed too expensive. Have you had any useful tips and tricks or suggestions for how to get buy-in, how to best communicate that?
So interestingly, Macquarie are currently providing some mentoring support for a group of young people who are on a STEAM mentoring program. But we have another organization, Quantcast, who are offering a similar thing. And we're now negotiating with them because there is a value that's attached to this. I can't say whatever that value would be for you, whatever that piece of work was. But I think you've got a decision to make. Sometimes you can take a loss leader. So the work we've done with Macquarie, we're effectively taking the hit on that with a view to actually there's potentially something further down the line. But I think you can also go down the approach of saying, actually, this is what this costs to us. if you want the benefits, and try to highlight some of the benefits to corporates that they get out of this. If that's something that you feel, actually, I'm going to stick to my guns, don't be afraid to do that. And if they are genuinely an organization that's going to be supportive of you, they'll be willing to negotiate. So I would say two choices. You either go with the sort of kind of take the hit, but with a view, and be really clear with them, actually, I'm gonna do this to start off with, but further down the line, you're going to need to start to pay for this. Or you go in straight away and say, actually, this is the cost of this. This is the value to you. And I think be really clear about the value to them, not just the cost to you, but this is what you are getting for this as an organization. I think, you might be surprised about how receptive increasingly corporates are becoming to that. I hope that's useful in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. It tap into what the other thing I like what you said throughout the presentation as well is actually do some research, get to know what their CSR objectives are and CSR goals, and almost fulfill that need with what you're trying to do as well, and make it.
I think
attractive.
That would be the key. Yeah, I think that would be the key takeaway that I would say to anybody listening to this is you have to view this in the same way as you would view the work you put into charitable trust applications. I've tried to give you some information about actually 2/3 of those at best are unsuccessful. We invest a huge amount of time in this in terms of the charitable trust side of things. We do not invest anywhere near the same amount of time in terms of the corporate world, but you have to put the similar amounts of time in. It won't just happen, but there's such a gold mine there for us as a sector. 4% of our income, that's woeful. I mean, it's absolutely, it's frankly pathetic on everybody's front. There's such an opportunity here. And I suppose that's the thing that I'm trying to convey is, put the effort in, and there are things there available for you. But as with charitable trust applications, there is a cost to that.
And just to follow on that, there's a question from Catherine Simpson here as well, who's asked, how have you specifically gone about putting a value on the volunteering element of what you do?
So funnily enough, actually, we're just starting to do that within the with this organization Quantcast. So we're just, and again, I am not saying that we have the definitive version of this. We have done a lot of that lost leader work. Believe me when I say to you, we have taken the hit on this stuff. But I think we're now starting to move towards, and Catherine, I don't know if you guys, but I think that there's somewhere there'll be a connection to my email address. If somebody can put it in the chat, it's youth@dragonhall.org.uk. If you want to reach out, and I'm more than happy to share the experiences that we're going through and with anybody, about how we're doing this and the things that we're constantly learning about it. So please reach out if anybody's interested.
Love that. Thank you very much, James. Love to see collaboration happen in action, happen live. It's brilliant. Well, and that's all we've got time for. So I think we've got through all the questions there. Huge thank you to you, James. That was an amazing session.
Cheers.
Really solid takeaways. Don't forget, you can rate this session straight afterwards by selecting the stars underneath the session title. Please do that. That gives us some amazing feedback that we can carry on to our next events and change and modify our events as we go forward. The session will also be available on demand within the next hour, and will be available on this platform for the next 30 days, so you can revisit anytime you want up until then. We're going to have a quick break now, but please do come back for the next session here. There's two going on at 11 o'clock. There's one called How to Set Up Effective User Journeys, and we also have a workshop called How to Build a Fundraising Strategy Amid Financial Uncertainty. You do need to sign up for the workshop, so if you haven't done that already, please head over to the page there and do so. Other than that, we'll see you in a little bit. Thanks again, James, and good to see you all.